welcome back to Soul Light Reflections. Excuse my voice, I am getting over being sick. I was in this wild portal of sickness for the last several days. I was sick in bed for 4 of those days. And I am finally having the energy to record another episode, to stay on track, to continue to release these weekly episodes. I'm so happy to be here. I'm happy and grateful that I have enough energy to be here. I definitely do not recommend having a really bad cold and stepping into 3rd trimester of pregnancy at the same time. It has been brutal. And I'm a little bit bummed because I was supposed to have a brand new podcast set up ready to go today for this recording. However, I am just not a tech whiz, and the equipment that I ordered, I realized that I needed another piece of equipment in order to make it function. And I was like, you know what? I'm going back to the drawing board. I am going to order a completely different mic that can just plug straight into my computer so I don't have to have like all of these other gadgets, especially because when I am traveling, I don't want to have a separate mic that I take with me when I travel or have to lug a bunch of extra equipment. So that's going to have to wait. Hopefully I'll have a new setup soon. And that is on releasing attachment to expectations and outcomes. So anyway, for today's episode, I really want to talk about grieving past versions of self, and not grieving from a place of sadness or a place of regret, but really finding that place of compassion, of reverence, of love within yourself. When I was planning for my January Sedona retreat, the theme that kept coming through was grieving self. And it's something that came up in conversation with other people, and it just kind of like was in my mind. And I don't think that I necessarily fully connected the dots until literally like this past week. The reason that it felt so resonant to utilize that as a theme is because grief is typically framed as something that is like really heavy, really dark, really sad. But that wasn't the energy that I was feeling for this. I was feeling this like really soft and sacred and intentional energy. It feels like offering an opportunity to look back with like nothing but love. And I'll get into why I realize this was so resonant, but the reason that this theme kept coming up for me is because of the people that I had been talking to that were dealing with needing to grieve past versions of self, but not necessarily recognizing that within themselves quite yet. So I wanted to be able to offer up a space that let people step into that portal. Grieving from a place of love means recognizing who you were before and like to actually see them again, like to actually be with that version of self again. Like, who were you in that chapter of life? What did that person love? What lit them up? What kind of music did they play on repeat? Who did they surround themselves with? How did they speak to themselves? Like, what were they learning? What were they dreaming of? What were they getting through and surviving through? What were they unlearning? I think that a lot of times in life, we are moving really, really fast, especially in today's day and age. I think that unfortunately, social media has added to that because it has continued to perpetuate this idea of instant gratification. And so a lot of times when we are moving through life, moving through seasons of life, we are rushing past these old versions of self because we're like, oh, well, I outgrew that version of myself. Oh, I healed past that version of myself. Oh, I'm moving on. But there's something really powerful about actually stepping back into that portal of self and being with that version of yourself and saying, hey, I see you. I remember who you were, and being there with a genuine amount of gratitude saying, thank you. I would not be here if it weren't for you. And I think that this theme is really alive for a lot of people right now. Like I said, I had talked to so many people who were like needing that. And I see it in messages, I see it in sessions with people, I see it in conversations, I see it in my own reflections. And a lot of us are standing at this like threshold, maybe with career, maybe moving, maybe relationship shifts, health shifts, spiritual initiations, identity shifts, or crisis even. And On the outside, these endings don't necessarily have to feel like dramatic. Like they might be kind of subtle, but on the internal level, it could feel really, really massive. And a lot of times we're just kind of like pushing past it and trying to just be like, okay, yeah, I know that past version of self. Okay, moving on, and I think that grief is a really big part of that. And whether we name it or not, it's something that we need to move through. I don't always like bringing like very specific examples from my own life into what I talk about on this podcast, because I think that a lot of times it's not necessary in order to get the point across. That's like just not where the medicine is. However, for this episode, I really want to share a really tender piece of my personal journey that's happening to me right now, because I think that not only can it be beneficial to those of you who might be in the exact same scenario or getting close to it, but I think that it is very relatable if you are not in this same exact type of scenario, but you can still kind of see glimmers of your own experience within this. So for me, this grieving portal has been especially present as I have just entered into my 3rd trimester of pregnancy, which is so crazy to think and to say. I cannot believe it. I feel like this has gone by so fast. And to think that I only have like 12-ish weeks left of being pregnant is insane to me. And I knew that this moment was coming. I knew that there would be a time when I start to grieve the maiden. People tell you about it all the time. You read about it, you're like mentally preparing. But now that I'm actually in it, it actually feels pretty different than like what I thought it would feel like. And it's not bad, it's not scary, it's just really different. It's real as fuck. It's not one of those things that you can understand until you're actually like in it. And there is a real beauty in that. There's depth, there is humility, there is tenderness. What's interesting about this is that the wave of this grief, of this season of grief that needs to happen, really started to hit me like as I was starting to come out of being sick. I was still kind of in that sickness portal. I had already slowed down for days. I had been in bed for 4 days. And I had already softened. I was already listening more closely. I was taking more time for journaling and resting and meditating. And honestly, I have to say the timing felt so perfect. And it still kind of took me by surprise. I was like, oh, okay. Literally, I entered my 3rd trimester the day before. And I was like, oh, this is what they mean. Like it just really came at me. My body had already asked me to pause by having this sickness. And I think that that genuinely made the space for these emotional and these spiritual layers to rise to the surface. And something that I really want to emphasize here is that whether you are grieving a version of yourself that is tied to motherhood or not, it is so important to notice where that grief is in your body, because that will help you dictate how to go about processing that grief and where exactly to put your energy focus as you are doing so. For me, when I sat and thought about it, my birthing coach asked me, where are you feeling this? And I said, actually in my solar plexus. And I was so grateful that she asked me, where do you feel this in your body? Because although I am a somatic embodiment coach, for some reason, we need other people to tell us what we already know sometimes. And that was not a question that I had asked myself yet. So she asked me, I said it was my solar plexus. I said it really genuinely feels like it's like wilting. And that's so interesting for me to sit with, because the solar plexus is all about like identity, personal power, authenticity, creativity. And this is a space that is usually really alive and very strong within me. And obviously, because that's like what I teach, that's how I show up in the world, right? I am me, and that is a huge part of my brand. But right now, what's feeling really strong and solid and grounded and supported and strong is my root and my sacral chakras. And as I was chatting with her, I said, intuitively, it feels like my third eye is what needs tuning so that my solar plexus can regain its footing. And when it comes to chakras, I definitely, like, I've done a yoga teacher training. I definitely have a basic understanding of the chakras, the energy systems within the body, how they work, how they operate, and that sort of thing. But I think that sometimes we get little nudges, and once in a while we kind of doubt our intuition. Like, it felt weird to say, oh yeah, my solar plexus is what needs work, but it feels like I need to tune more into my third eye. And so I shared this with my birthing mentor, just trusting it, and she reflected something that kind of shifted things for me. She was like, wait, this is so beautiful because your root and your sacral are so strong, and you can really focus on the solar plexus, the next chakra up, because your foundation is feeling so good. And she reminded me that there is actually a very deep connection between the solar plexus, the gut, and the anja, the third eye, the intuition. And so I was like, wow, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then she said something that literally like brought tears to my eyes instantly. She was like, now that you're in the third trimester of pregnancy, the maiden is starting to recognize herself. The ego is going to get big. It's going to bring a lot to the surface. So be mindful of the places it takes you and the grip that it has. And she was like, this is a really beautiful place to begin surrendering and to find so much joy in everything that the maiden has carried you through. And that really hit for me. I was sitting there so teared up and reading it over and over, because this is what actual, like, true, authentic grieving looks like when you give yourself the space. It's not forceful. It's not dramatic. It's not rushed. It can be slow. It can be compassionate. It can be so intentional. And she was reminding me how important it is to let the maiden die gently. And when I very first read that message, I was like, oh my God, like, let the maiden die? Like, damn. But truly she has to. And we can choose how to let that version of self pass. We can choose to let them pass with ease, with reverence, thinking of this like death and rebirth cycle. Knowing that we're stepping into this brand new portal and we need to be that new iteration of self in order to do that. And that past version of self cannot come with you physically. They will always be part of you on a spiritual level, right? But this is where I think that the conversation like really applies to everyone, because we cannot always take that old version of self with us into the new season of life. And sometimes we try to. And I think that that's where we get stuck. That's where manifestations become stagnant. That's where we might stop getting like our signs and synchronicities from the universe. That's where relationships might not be what we thought that they would be, because we're it's as if we're like trying to stuff ourselves into old clothes that just don't fit or just don't look good on us anymore. Just don't really give the essence of like who we are. It's awkward and it's forced, and it's very clear that it doesn't go. But when we allow that past version of self to pass, to die, it allows us to really step in an embodied form. And then we get to take all of those beautiful things with us. We take not only the love and the reverence for the past version of self, all the lessons we've learned, all the skills and knowledge we've gained, but we also allow ourselves to step into that portal of the new self, of the new season of life, with a strong intuition, with all of those synchronicities and manifestations still coming to light. It's making a choice to step forward and not have like super cloudy glasses on. Anytime you are grieving a past version of self, there can be this subtle like panic underneath it. I feel like this feeling of like, oh my God, what if I don't do it right? Or like, what if I don't have enough time to process this fully before my next chapter? And I actually noticed that with myself. I noticed that as I started stepping into this grieving the maiden portal, this pressure of like, oh, well, what if I don't have enough time before birth happens? And this like wild ego death birth portal turns me into a mother. And the truth is, that's just not how it works. That is such a like quote unquote human way of thinking. It's this idea that like the grieving has to be done before the next chapter begins, that there's like some sort of imaginary finish line, but healing doesn't happen that way. Like grief doesn't move that way. Evolution doesn't happen that way. Grieving is always going to continue in waves. If you have ever had someone very dear to you in your life pass, you know that feeling of how that grieving, it will come forever. It will come in waves. And at first it feels really, really fucking intense. And then it starts to subside. And then sometimes it gets intense again around anniversaries or birthdays or passing anniversaries. And then it will subside again. And every feeling is temporary, but the integration of that will continue and the remembering will continue. Because the healing is not ever done. We're never done becoming, because we're constantly becoming the next iteration of self. And that is why we're here on this school of earth. That's why every single one of us that's here, that is listening to this, or people in your life, everyone around us, we all came here and incarnated in order to evolve, in order to feel the full spectrum of humanity, and grieving and evolving is part of that. Quick little loving interruption into this episode to talk about my upcoming retreat. This retreat is happening in September. I am announcing it in less than a week, so stay tuned on social media, stay tuned on my website, and you can get more information about that. This is going to be bigger and better than any retreat that I have hosted yet, and I am so excited to share this space with you. Go to my website, playfulembodiment.com, or come message me on Instagram or TikTok or Substack at Playful Embodiment. I would love to chat about this opportunity with you. My retreats are always all-inclusive. All you have to do is get yourself to the location. And it always includes lodging, a private chef the entire time for all meals and snacks, ecstatic dance, breathwork, sound healing, daily workshops, yoga, and so much more. This is the type of portal where you step in and you are completely taken care of the whole time. Every single detail is thought of for you so that you can just simply show up as your highest self and get what you need out of it. Also, a shameless plug for my company with my husband, Lucid Hydration. You've probably heard me talk about this before, but we are so proud of this product. It is an all-natural electrolyte beverage that you mix with your water. We never use anything artificial, no artificial colors or dyes or ingredients or fillers. We also use sea salt and coconut water powder. So unlike a lot of other electrolyte products on the market that just use table salt, we like to use as clean of sources as possible, including 6 organic functional mushrooms, ashwagandha, and rhodiola rosea. We harness the energy of these plants as well as essential vitamins and minerals. It is designed for daily use to keep you nice and hydrated, but it's more than just hydration. It keeps your brain and your body happy, keeps brain fog away, keeps your energy high without the jitters or crash. So go to lucidhydration.com, use code Rachel, RACHEL, and you'll get a sweet little discount. Back to our topic of grieving. Sometimes when we feel the magnitude of like what's coming next in our life, it makes us feel like there's this pressure to grieve in the right way, but there's no one right way. Just like there's no one right way to heal, to grow, to change, to do anything in life. You know, my favorite motto is you can actually do whatever the fuck you want. And it's so true. When it comes to grieving, this is the ultimate trust the process moment. Like, it applies to whether you are stepping into motherhood, a new identity, a new season of life, or really just like needing to let go of some past shit. You don't have to rush past them. You have to trust the process. You don't have to cling to them. You simply have to be with them, to honor them, to lay flowers at their feet. There is a beautiful artist by the name of Emery Hall who has this amazing poem, this spoken word song you can find her on Spotify. And I think it's called 1,000 Different Women. Okay, you know what? I'm actually going to read the lyrics to you because it is so beautiful and I feel like it is so resonant with what we're talking about right now. So the poem goes like this. Make peace with all the women you once were. Lay flowers at their feet. Offer them incense and honey and forgiveness. Honor them and give them your silence. Listen. Bless them and let them be. For they are the bones of the temple you sit in now. for they are the rivers of wisdom leading you toward the sea. I have been 1,000 different women. I get chills like even just reading that, but especially listening to the song. So I highly recommend that you look up this song. It's by Trevor and Emery Hall. And they also have a ton of other amazing music and poems. But I think that those words are such a clear example of how to grieve that past version of self without telling you exactly how. It's like how to show up for that version of self in order to be in your grieving portal. Because when you're grieving past versions of self, it's not about like staying stuck in that place. It's about making sure that there's not any parts of you that feel like you abandoned them as you move forward. That way, when you step into the next iteration of self, you're arriving whole. You have given the space and the time and the energy to that you. Before I close this out, I want to leave you with something really practical. So something that like you can actually put into practice. Because grieving past versions of yourself, it doesn't have to be like just in your mind. It can actually be embodied. You can ritualize it. You can find a way to honor outside of yourself. I think one of the most powerful things that you can do is create a ceremony for your past self, which is something that I had planned for my Sedona retreat. It doesn't even have to be like super elaborate or performative. It just needs to be intentional. So it might start with like looking back at yourself year by year. So maybe going backwards. So starting now and then going last year and then the year before and then the year before that. Or you could start from the beginning if that feels more resonant for you and then like moving forward to where you are now. If going year by year seems daunting or like a lot, you could simply look at past seasons of self that really resonate for you, or like chapters of your life that feel really like clear and defined. What I really like doing is pulling out old photos, like really looking at them, noticing how that version of you held themselves, like what their eyes say, what were they dealing with at the time, where were they going, what were their dreams. And honestly, sometimes I've even like ripped old photos of myself and offered them to the fire. Like especially photos that I've loved. I have done that too before because I knew it was time to let her go. And it's not from a place of rejection, which I feel like we usually would like rip photos of ourselves because we're like mad at it or we hate it or whatever. No, I literally have done this with photos that I love because when I offer them to the fire, I say a prayer for her and I honor her and I bless her and I tell her how grateful I am for her and I release her. Another way is to listen to playlists that you might have made during those seasons and like really feeling what's coming up in your body. Or maybe like finding scents that you used to wear or like scents that you used to love. That's a really good way to like open up that portal pretty instantly. Reading old journal entries, even if you only like open up a journal and like read a couple of lines, or maybe you don't journal, but you find like old notes that you've written to yourself or something. Books that you used to read that maybe you haven't picked up in many years. Notice what that version of you was asking for. What is it that they needed? What is it that they were becoming? And then find some way to offer that person extra love and compassion and gratitude in that moment. Say thank you. From the deepest place in your heart that you can find, say thank you genuinely. Place a hand on your body wherever you feel her most. Name what it was that she carried you through. Acknowledge what it was that she survived. Maybe saying all of these things out loud can be really powerful for you and like really honoring what she taught you and what she got you through. And then after that, I think it is so important to create some way to release. It might be through fire. Personally, that's my favorite way to release. But it might be through breath. It might be through movement. It might be through water. Burying something in the earth, allowing the earth to take it. Maybe tearing paper is enough for you. Speaking it out loud, that's another way to get it out. Just let your body choose, like whatever feels resonant for you. But the way to move through grief is to witness it. That is what it asks of us, is to genuinely witness and honor. An important point of this is that we're not erasing our past self. That's not what's happening here. We're not trying to push them out the door okay, yeah, you've had your time, bye. No, we need to let them know that they mattered, that we still love them, that we know they are still a part of us, but that physically they cannot walk with us. When those past versions of ourselves are genuinely honored and we hold that space for them, it's like they're allowed to go naturally. They don't cling anymore. They aren't haunting you. They figure out how to integrate. And on the other side, it doesn't feel like loss. It feels like continuity. It feels like, oh, wait, I'm not actually becoming someone completely new. No, that version of self is still deep within me, and that version of self has allowed me to evolve into the next iteration of self. I'm more complete now because every single version of you still lives inside the current one. This grieving period is just when you get to thank that person, and then you get to let that person rest within you. If this episode resonated with you, I highly encourage you to utilize some sort of ritual or practice in order to allow that next iteration of self to fully step forward and for that past version of self to feel so loved and appreciated. I would love to hear more about your process or anything that came up while you listened to this episode. As always, you can reach out to me via email, through my website, or on social media. I love and appreciate every single one of you that is here right now listening to this. Until next time, keep shining, keep aligning, and we'll talk next week.